PMU is a common term that people use to stand for pregnant mare's urine. And the way you can recognize that this is used are any of the drugs that you hear, like Premarin, Prempro. It's that Prem that is indicating that basically what they're doing is they're using pregnant mares, and then during the last 6 months of their pregnancy, they're making them wear bladder bags and they're collecting their urine because at that point in their pregnancy, their urine is incredibly rich in progesterone. So they're extracting the hormone from the urine and then putting it into these pills for humans to take as a hormone supplement. Now, the hormone can be synthetically made and it's just as effective. However, it's more cost effective for them to use the horses. And the problem with this is not only is having to force a pregnant mare to stand in a standing stall with a pee bag tied to her pretty inhumane, because during that time she can't lay down to sleep. She can only sleep standing up, and horses are supposed to sleep laying down a little bit every day. But once the foal is born and weaned, they sell that foal off because they want that mare pregnant again as soon as possible. So unfortunately, they can't get the hormone-infused urine without the mares being pregnant, and there really is very little market for these foals who end up being the byproduct of this industry. Some of the PMU farms try to be responsible, and they're at least breeding horses that are of some quality or at least desirable breeds. Others just breed whatever they have. They don't care. They just want the babies. The reason it's often draft horses is because, one, they pee a lot of volume, and two, they have very, very uncomplicated births because they tend to be very large horses and they're breeding them to small stallions and getting draft crosses. And then three, draft horses tend to be of pretty mellow temperaments, so they're easier to handle. You wouldn't want a barn full of like Arabian PMU mares. They'd go crazy, being tied in there. So it's very unfortunate, for the draft horses that all the positive things of their nature has led to them being chosen for the specific industry. There isn't anything being done to stop it because nobody really cares. Luckily, it's been slowing down only because education of the problems with using hormone therapy. I think if that hadn't happened, it would still be just as rampant as it ever was. We certainly used to have a much higher percentage than we do now because there used to be many more of them out there. Over the past couple years, now that they've found that hormone replacement therapy has some links to cancer, it's kind of fallen out of favor. It's still happening, but on much, much less of a scale. When that first started to happen, though, all of the PMU ranches just completely liquidated their horses. And at that point, we had a humongous influx of all these PMU horses that were coming in, adults, babies. What we're normally seeing now is older horses who are coming, the ones who have been the brood mares coming out. They're very, very hard horses for people to place. They're really challenging to handle. Typically, their life experience with humans has been that we're just not cool. So they're not inclined to want to be our friend. And so there's a very, very long path of rehabilitating and retraining those horses. My personal horse is a PMU horse. I think she's amazing. I was very lucky to meet her at 4 years old. She had stood the line for 2 years. And when I purchased her sight unseen, she was supposed to be in foal to a Shire stallion. Her sister was, she was not. And the PMU rancher that had her had lost his contract. And so I was very blessed to find her, but she was a little bit of a trial at first. She was difficult. It took 4 months to be able to touch her anywhere except her neck. And when I first got her, she'd just as soon kick you as look at you. She just had no place in her world for a human. She did not want us. Our PMU horses right now are Capricorn, and Capricorn definitely is poster child of common PMU horse problems. Cassidy was also a PMU, but she's just of a different personality profile. She's really mellow just by nature, so she hasn't been nearly as challenging. Sailor was a PMU. Most of her others have since graduated and gone on to be adopted. But yeah, Capricorn is a very typical. She acts almost wild. Our adoption policy focuses the strongest on trying to make a good match of horse and rider. We certainly get lots of inquiries where people are like, oh, I saw X horse on the website. I really want to come see it. It's very, very beautiful. Normally where we stop them is we say, wait, no, we don't quite do it that way. Why don't you tell us what you're looking for in a horse, what your goals are for riding, how hard you ride and how often you ride, and now let's talk about your experience as a rider. So first I can look at all the horses and say, okay, I can mark these horses off that list. They're not sound enough for that rider's goals. And then once I have it down to these are all the horses that can meet the rider's goals, then we look at what the rider says their ability and their experience is, and then we can start picking the horses out of that group that would meet. And that way when they come out, I can say of the whole farm, here are the 4 horses I have that will meet your needs. Let's try them all. And that seems to be a more successful way of matching than rather saying, I saw one on the website and it was really, really pretty and I want to look at that one. As far as a home, we're not expecting the Taj Mahal. We just expect our homes to be safe, to have nice fencing that's kept in good repair, to have adequate shelter for the horse to have access to if it needs it. For any other horses on the property to obviously be in good condition, look good, have nice feet, and they have to have a good working relationship with their vet and agree to all the terms of our contract, which would include that they're going to have routine farrier care, annual dental care, annual veterinary care, basically the minimum standards of being a good horse owner. Adoption has always been feast or famine, and it never makes any sense. It does always seem to go in cycles. Sometimes there'll be weeks where it'll be really quiet and we'll only have a couple inquiries, and then all of a sudden it's like everyone's beating down the door and they're trying to make appointments and we're scheduled 3 and 4 weeks out. And it's never any rhyme or reason. It's just you enjoy it while it's coming, and then when you get a break, you enjoy that too, and you know that that's going to end. We do accept any of our horses back at any time for any reason. I think every single one of our adopters enters into their adoption contract completely and totally meaning to keep this horse for the rest of its life. I think that doesn't always happen. And I think that people need to understand when they acquire a horse that, life does get in the way. Things will get in the way, and, there are sacrifices that have to be made. But each person has to determine for themselves what that sacrifice, is going to be. I mean, I've worked 3 jobs before to support 3 of my horses who were in long-term retirement because I didn't want to get rid of them, even though I couldn't ride them anymore. But that was a sacrifice I was willing to make. Someone else might decide that's not the sacrifice they're willing to make. But I understood when I had older horses that every time I took on a new one, I had to look at the fact that that's another one I have to retire, and they can live a very, very long time. So I think some of our adopters, sometimes it can get a little harder on them than they expected, or their goals or their life might change. We don't judge them for that. It happens. We just like knowing that every time when we rescue a horse, we promise that horse that it's now safe for the rest of its life. We're not going to let it get adopted and then go out in the world and then find out that 5 years later it got sold, and maybe they sold it to a nice home, but now that nice home sold it to someone who's only an home, and now that home sold the horse to somebody who's a home, and now the horse is back in hot water again and on a path to being in a dangerous position, which is part of why we require that any horse adopted from us, if anyone can't keep it, and we don't care what the reason why is, it can absolutely come back. Me personally, what I find most challenging is working with people. When I started the horse rescue, I started it because I love horses and I love working with horses. As the rescue's grown and gotten much bigger, I've had to expand that into learning to work with lots and lots of different people. And that for me is a personal challenge because my own personality can be very direct and abrupt, and some people don't always know how to take that, or they know how to take it, they just don't enjoy it. So that can be difficult and challenging for me. It's also been challenging that as the rescue's grown, my job has changed. My job with the rescue used to be to feed the horses every day and then go ride them. Now the rescue's grown to a size where there's so much administrative and paperwork that my contribution to the rescue is often better spent working behind the scenes and in the office and on the computer. I don't always enjoy my work on that end, but I do understand that it's what I have to do in order to help the horses. And while it might not be as satisfying as going out and working a horse in the round pen, it's equally as important. And my role changes, and I just have to accept that that's the new one. I liked the old one a little better, but it is what it is. I think the most satisfying for me, I've managed to learn to compartmentalize going to the slaughter auctions, and rather than focus on all the other horses that are shipping, I've managed to find a way within myself to only focus and look at the horses that we're bringing home. And so for me, I think that is absolutely the most satisfying. That and rehabilitating a starving horse. I think there's nothing better than sitting in the stall with a skinny, skinny horse and listening to it chew its first meal in months. And they close their eyes and they savor it. And that's very satisfying and rewarding. I'm also very proud of our horses when they get adopted. It almost kind of feels like a little college graduation for them. And people have said like, oh, how can you stand it? And I'll be honest, there's times that I cry, when a horse has to leave, and it's one that I'm very, very attached to. There's other times that inside I'm doing a happy dance because I didn't know we would ever find a match for that horse. But even if I am sad that the horse is gone, I'm still proud of them. I'm proud that they get, and happy for them that they get to start this new life. And while I think all the horses here at the rescue are happy horses, they certainly get all their needs met, and they get lots of social time and time out at the pasture and grazing, and they're content with that. I also recognize that living here must be a little bit like living in a foster home. I do think that the horses have a sense that this isn't the end of the road, that there's one place further yet. And I think horses really enjoy a one-on-one relationship. They know when a person is their person. And I do think that's one thing that the horses here don't always get, that is a benefit when they go to that final home. They finally get to have that too.